All right, last segment. You guys ready to learn something a little bit more practical? Okay.
You go.
All right. Paul, have you ever seen me do this? Brett, I know you haven't, but
I have.
okay. So I'm
Multiple
talking.
occasions, actually.
Beg pardon?
On multiple occasions.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I'm talking about how to clean the contacts of your lens and your camera. So why would you do this? This ensures that your autofocus speed and the information that's being transferred back and forth is always snappy. If I were to really think about this in any other way, imagine like a hose being blocked or like the arteries in your heart being blocked. You're trying to clean that information and that plaque out of there. And this is how you do it. First off, all you need is a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to warn everyone, do not do this to your sensor. Be very careful. I would suggest that everyone tries this at least once, and just be super, super conservative, and be super careful because, you know, you're doing this to basically the heart of your camera. So what you do, and I'm purposely doing this with Sony because the mounts on Sony's are very prone to this happening. So I'm doing this with the Sigma 3514, and right now I have the contacts of the lens right there. So before I'm going to put that back on very quickly. Usually I would take like the cap and I'd fill it up with isopropyl alcohol, but right now, just for convenience sakes, I'm just going to dip it right in. And honestly, I mean, it's 70% alcohol, it'll be fine anyway, realistically. So what you do is you have the wet tip right there, and you have the camera lens, and you have the contacts right there. You guys can see that pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now what you do is you just go ahead and you just sort of wipe it down. And then when you're done, you take the dry end and you just dry it off like so. Now, you would also have to do that with your camera. And to do that, you get another Q-tip. And you dip it in. And again, the reason why you're doing this is to clear up the debris and all that other stuff. And now you have your camera. And a lot of people, they might do this. I'm going to do this right now. But, so I'm just going to do a light sort of tap and clean right there. And I'm being very gentle because I don't want any liquid to really sort of spill in. But the best way to absolutely do it is to do this. So this way, if you have any excess liquid, it will just come right down. And I don't really need to dry that. I think that'll be fine. And then all you do is now you put them both back together and you are ready to shoot. And what this will do, once again, is cleaning the contacts ensures that the autofocus performance is in tip-top shape. It will constantly transmit the metering information correctly, and it will do just a whole bunch of other communication things. Now, you would think, okay, well, my lens is constantly attached to my camera. Why would I need to do this? Well, if your camera is not weather resistant and if your lens is not weather resistant, then there are little pieces of debris that get in there all the time whenever you're changing lenses, and even if you're not changing lenses at all, like stuff still gets in there. Even if you do have something that is weather sealed, I would check the seal. This, for example, the Sigma has very slight rubber gasketing there. I've played with lenses that have a lot more, like Canon has a lot more, Fujifilm has a lot more, and you have to find a way to ensure that like nothing will get in there, and that's really how the mounts work. But even then, stuff still tends to get in there, so you have to clean them every now and again. And where you'll see the most performance boost with this is with tracking autofocus and then also focusing in low light. Now, again, really be careful. Make sure that none of this gets onto your sensor. There are wet swabs for cleaning your sensor. I don't really like doing those either. I usually use an Arctic butterfly brush, and I will very gently clean the sensor. I think, Paul, you might have seen me do that once.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I barely ever do, but yesterday when we were out in the field, actually, we really needed that. And
For the most part, anything sensor related, you should be good to go with a rocket blower. Anything worse than that, you've probably done something monumentally stupid.
I've
Yeah.
seen people like changing lenses underneath ACs in New York, and stuff just drips down. It's like,
Yeah,
no, there's something going on
I
there.
cringe whenever I see people change lenses with the sensor facing up. It's
Oh man,
it's like that's like the cardinal rule.
yeah,
Like if there ever was a rule that you never like break, it's just the easiest thing to do. Just face your sensor down.
yeah, man. As I'm sitting here, like, and you're talking, this camera is tracking your face, no problems, even faster than I've ever seen before, and that was all just from a little bit of a performance boost. So, Brett or Paul, do you guys have any questions about that?
I guess maybe just not really question, but just to add to what you were saying, the reason why you'll see just schmutz get onto your sensor is because it's an electronically charged surface. So what that would means is like anytime you have a surface that's electronically charged, dust naturally gets attracted to it. So this actually really helps to make sure that nothing gets in there to negatively impact performance at all. Like we test stuff all the time, and sometimes like you never know, right? It could be something brand new, but it could be a brand new lens, and even just a bit of cleaning would help, like ensure that it's communicating perfectly with your camera body.
Yeah. Brett, any questions about this process?
I have one question, but also going on from what Paul was saying, turn your camera off when you change your lens.
Oh, yeah.
Just
absolutely.
Turn it off. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then the other thing as well is you use cotton swabs, and I could see that as you were cleaning, it was fraying at the tip. Have you ever had any of the cotton swab get stuck on your sensors, on the contacts before?
That is a great question. I have not. I think partially it's because, well, as I'm doing it on the camera, like it'll fray a little bit, but I've never had it really get stuck. On the lens, I've never had it get stuck at all. And it's pretty impossible for it to fray there. But I mean, that's a great question. I've never had that problem. And I mean, even if you look at like kits, they're all giving you cotton swabs. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I personally actually used the little microfiber cotton pads that makeup artists use. So I actually used those. Like that's a tip that I picked up a long time ago. Like when I just work on set, I would notice that they were using those to basically do what we do, but to remove makeup, right? And I noticed that like they don't like kind of disintegrate like some cheaper swabs would do. So maybe that's an option for people that like just go to a drugstore and get those pads. They're just as cheap, and you get like packs of 100, and you're good to go for a while. So if you're worried about any like to be like as safe as possible, that might be an option for people that are concerned about that.
Yeah, I've never seen that happen though, and I mean, again, even with cotton swabs.
Well, also you're not like you're not going to town with the swab, so I wouldn't worry about that too much because you're really realistically just like kind of dabbing onto the contact points.
Yeah, you have to be very conservative and careful.
Yeah,
if
you're
you're
not
out in like the desert and
know.
out in the field, then I get it.
Yeah, you're not like you're not like that kid at the restaurant like going to town with a crayon.
Oh, jeez.
So I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, Brett or Paul, or about that process?
No, don't think so.
Yeah.
Sell some money.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do, and I don't think enough people do it, especially with cameras that aren't weather sealed. Like Brett, you have the XT200 in it right now, and I mean, like, you can get a major performance boost just from doing that to the lens and the contacts, I'm sure. I do it with every unit that we get in because usually they go through someone else's hands, and I don't really know what they're doing with their cameras or the lenses, and I'm just like, okay, fine. No, that's probably a problem here with the autofocus. And I've seen that a number of times, especially with Panasonic units. So yeah, it works out to just do that. And so again, I recommend everyone do it. Maybe depends on how often you're using your camera, honestly, and where you're keeping it and all that kind of stuff. But also like what kind of lens you're using and how tight that gasket is, a whole bunch of stuff. The best performance for lens to mount resistance that I've seen is probably in the Element Alliance and Fujifilm. And then Canon and Nikon are pretty good. Sony, I've just always had problems with.
The A7 R4 is pretty good. The A9, A9 II is pretty good also. But I think one of the nicest, like the tightest gasket, is probably on the GFX 100. With some of the GF lenses, that sucker is tight. Like you're torquing it down.
Yeah, I haven't used that in a while. I know Brett's used it more than I have as well too. But yeah. That's really it. That's the end of the show, I guess. We're a little bit early, I guess, more than normal. But nothing wrong with that, right, guys?
Yeah, I guess we could tackle some Q&A.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Let's see in the chat.
A few comments. Let's see.
Off the line, backup, backblaze.
I
offline.
do use Backblaze. Yeah, Backblaze is excellent. It's one of the most cost-effective offline backup solutions you can have. But it all depends on the amount of data you're working with. If you've got huge data sets that you don't need to access often, maybe look into something like Glacier. But Backblaze is good for it's like semi-hot data, I would say. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if there are any other questions or.
No, it doesn't seem like there are.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in on Memorial Day weekend. We will catch you next week. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Brett. Take care.